guys, it's Horsey Steph, and today I am back with another Horse Trainer Reacts to Horse Fails video. I hope you guys are enjoying this series where, as always, I react to people's fails, falls, spills, utter catastrophes that they post online, and it makes me cringe every single time. And I try to give you a little bit of feedback on why I think it happened and how you could prevent similar fails from happening to you in the future. If you guys do enjoy this series, make sure to check out the playlist in the description box down below, which has all of my Horse Trainer Reacts to Horse Fails video. If you guys could go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, that would help me out a ton. And let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, I'm not really sure what happened there. I think that must have been planned because she was like hanging off the side and then just plopped. It's also possible she got really unseated and then was hanging off the side and decided, you know what, I'm not gonna save this, I'm just gonna plop to the ground. That's also very possible. Super hard to tell because they gave absolutely no background on that, just the actual act of falling the rest of the way off after she was already, you know, halfway off, leaning off. All right, so this horse was doing some pulls, got a little bit quick through the pulls, and she did one of my least favorite things that some of my students have done over the years, where when the horse gets quick, she just grabbed his face, like got a death grip on his face. I always preach half halt release, half halt release. If your horse doesn't stop, half halt bigger, release. Hanging on your horse doesn't really get them to slow down. And the end result is the horse just starts to grab the bit, get upset that you're holding them, curl, get faster, and then they start to bronc. And that's exactly what's happening here. He's getting a little bronky, trying to get his head back because all he cares about is getting his head back. So again, half halt release, especially if your horse is getting quick, throwing in that release is gonna help them bring them back, keep your rein more powerful so you don't have to hang on them like your life depends on it, and also keep them a lot happier so they don't potentially buck you off. And honestly, like, this horse isn't bolting. So I get that you might just grab their face when they start bolting because you get so left behind. You have like, you need to grab the rein to stay on. You're hanging on for dear life, literally. This horse is just cantering quicker than she would like him to canter and quicker than he should have done that pole exercise. And of course, eventually she comes off that bronking because she's not a super balanced rider and was holding his face so bad he never stopped. All right, this is a pretty big bucker. She's riding these bucks really well. Doing exactly what I would do, staying up in a 2-point, which just gives you more clearance between the saddle and yourself if they are gonna buck. She's honestly not getting on his face too bad, mostly just when he actually goes to put his head down and buck, she's grabbing his face. That's the time you do want to start to grab their face. You don't want to let their head hit the ground because they're going to buck even bigger. And this one's already bucking quite big. So I imagine if he bucks even bigger, they're going to be ginormous. But she is mostly letting him keep the forward through these bucks. This seems to be kind of a compilation of different bucks he's done over time. So maybe a little bit of a chronic bucker. That would worry me quite a bit in terms of like training, welfare. Something is going on to make that horse buck pretty consistently. Obviously, every horse is more predisposed to one bad habit than another. But if your horse bucks pretty often, you have issues. It should be a pretty occasional thing, especially big bucks like that. He's obviously quite upset about something, whether it's because he's in pain or frustrated or upset about the training. Either way, something is definitely bothering him that should be addressed. Okay, so another one that did exactly what I tell you not to do. As the horse reared, she pulled back. The horse was like, oh no, not my face. He didn't flip over backwards, which is what you would think about more frequently with pulling back while they rear. But I don't think he was really ever a big rearer. He was more like popping up in the front to then pop up in the back. So when she grabbed his face, he just dove his head down and pulled her right over his shoulder to get his head back. I would imagine if she hadn't grabbed his face, she would have stayed on because she wouldn't have been pulled over his head. And he might not have been so dramatic either because he didn't need to get his head back. All the drama there was because he absolutely needed to get his head back right away because she grabbed his face and he didn't want his face grabbed. All right, we got the horse out on the trail. Oh, if I hate those. When they just pop up and do that quick spin out of nowhere, they look like okay. I wouldn't say that horse looked relaxed. His head was pretty high, he was pretty looky. But he's walking along. It's probably really normal for the rider for him to be in that head carriage and be a little tense. He's probably like that all the time. She thinks nothing of it. And then all of a sudden he wheels up and spins. Obviously we know that happens because of trigger stacking. And if the horse wasn't relaxed to start with, any small thing can just set them from basically at threshold to over threshold and cause a spook. That's why it's really important you make sure your horse is relaxed at all times, or at least as much of the time as you can get them relaxed, so that you're not having these kind of blow up reactions. That being said, that does really suck though, to be on the trail and have your horse just kind of duck out of under you. It's happened to me once. Always honestly my greatest fear of trail riding like really spooky horses is that I won't be able to go with that spin. Because sometimes they just spin so fast, and I worry about like falling off on the trail and then, you know, losing my horse and whatnot. It all seems like a whole problem. Obviously, I mean, most horses really aren't going to go very far, so it's not a huge concern, but it does always worry me when I think about riding like a really spooky horse out on the trail. I try to make sure they're super well prepared. I have them really relaxed as we start out. I have lots of tools in my toolbox to relax them if they start to get tense. And if they get really worked up, I'll get off and do some groundwork to again help them resettle themselves and get back into that relaxed nervous state, so that I'm just limiting chances of them blowing up like this, and just keeping them way under threshold. So it's gonna take something big to spook them versus something little that, you know, we wouldn't see coming. Obviously, like something crazy happens, every horse is gonna spook, but then at least you know the spook is coming because you'll respond to the stimuli with the horse. Versus like the horses that are already on edge, you have no idea what they're spooking at because it's like little rattles in the brush and whatnot that happen all the time, or just building until one more is like too much for them. So that's what makes that situation so much more dangerous than just like something dramatic happening and causing your horse to like spin and bolt or something. And of course her horse did run away. Oh, I thought this was doing a cute canter pirouette. She honestly did a pretty good job there of trying to grab the neck and stay out of that horse's face while it was rearing. Obviously, there's not a ton you can do when a horse is rearing except try to get them forward. But once they're already, you know, perpendicular to the ground and straight up, you really just have to grab their neck and try to stay on or bail. It's very hard to get your leg on or convince a horse to go forward from that position. And if you do start to ask them to go forward, sometimes that will prompt them to go up higher. So generally you want to wait to try to get them forward until they like hit the ground again, or catch them as they're starting to go up, just when they start to come up off the ground, be like, yeah, but take that forward. Once they're straight up, I mean, there's really nothing I would recommend doing except grabbing the neck and hanging on and hoping they come back down. Or if you think they're going over backwards, definitely bail, get out of the way. You do not want to fall under that horse, because that's a really dangerous situation. All right, cute. Again, that horse barely turned quick. Around the corner, I'm pretty sure they were already going around. I mean, he couldn't have kept going straight because he would have run over the cameraman. So it's not like there was a jump there that they were supposed to jump and that surprised the rider. And they were both looking to the left, and he tracked to the left. He might have taken like one quick turn step, but I wouldn't even call that close to a spin. I would think at the level that you're jumping, like the 70s or whatever that was, could have even been the 80s, you should be able to ride a horse that turns slightly faster than you thought that they would turn when you apply your aids to turn. But no, she just toppled right off like she's never ridden a turn at the canter before. I really don't know what happened there. That was cute. Okay. So that was a one stride, and she did kind of the cardinal sin of jumping. She landed on her horse's neck, really land forward, and didn't sit up between the in jump and the out jump. So comes off the in jump, lands forward on her horse's neck, stays down there on the horse's neck, coming up to the out jump, which is little oxer, and the horse puts his head down and stops. She just slides right off. You have to sit up after your fences, and I'm not recommending, your horse's front feet hit the ground, sit up and grab their face. Obviously you don't want to do that, but you do want to get yourself back to balance in that first half stride after landing off a fence so that you can prepare for the next one. Especially if you're doing something like an in and out, something that's a close related distance, because you just don't have time to get up if you're not getting up in that first half stride. And if you're waiting until a whole stride has passed, you're going to get into the issue that this rider got into, which is that the whole stride passed and she was still forward and she needed to be back to take off for her next fence. And it's hard to say if this horse would have stopped anyway. I mean, I don't know the horse, I don't know his history, but I certainly have had horses over the years that would stop at a fence purely because she was so far forward leaning on that horse's neck. So it's definitely something I would be thinking, well, maybe if she had sat back and stayed up in between that one stride, the horse might have just jumped right out of it just fine. It's possibly her that caused the stop, not just the horse thinking, oh, that looks scary, I don't think I can do that. Oh, that's the slowest little fall ever. And she put her hands down. In that instance, I think that was a perfectly safe thing to do. But generally, I always recommend appendages in, tuck and roll. Landing on your hands are a good way to break your hand, wrist, arm, etc. So definitely not the way you want to fall. That was such a slow fall. I mean, I think basically she got forward on the horse's neck, and then when he put his head down, she just slid down his neck. I'm sure he put his head down because pressure on his neck. He's like, oh, lower it. But the pressure was just her body falling forward. So had he kept his head up, she might have stayed on. But it was a very, very slow, controlled slide off the neck. So in that sense, you're not hitting your hands with force. But I would caution anyone that has that kind of inclination to put their hand out to catch them. You come off at any speed, you're going to snap something. You're much better tucking and rolling, letting your shoulder or your back hit the ground, because you're just much less likely to break something or cause any big injury in that instance. This rider didn't even stand a chance. The very first buck, you saw the horse kind of put his head down and curl his nose to his chest, so we knew he was about to buck, but he just fired a big one and she plopped right off. I would guess the horse either doesn't buck very often or she's just not used to riding bucks. Maybe this isn't her horse, whatever. Because definitely if you ride that a lot, you're going to be a lot more prepared for it. She absolutely wasn't prepared at all, did nothing to help herself in that situation, and just came right off like she's never felt a buck before. Which is fair. I mean, not every rider has ridden bucks. As an instructor, I certainly try to prevent my students from riding bucks for as long as possible, because I don't want my lesson horses or my beginner students to be subjected to bucking horses. So it's not anything negative saying she's never ridden a buck. It's kind of something you get experience with as you ride more horses, because it just becomes harder and harder to avoid at some point, because the fact of the matter is horses do buck sometimes. But not uncommon, and if you're in a good riding program, you'll actually be able to ride a buck just fine, even if you've never ridden one, because you'll learn to have a really balanced centered position. And the actual buck, it might catch you off guard, but it's not going to bother you too much, as long as they're not huge. I mean, that was a pretty big buck for somebody that's not used to bucking. Oh no, and the horse is taking off. Riding through water can be kind of fun, because there can be stuff like a fish might touch the horse's leg or a piece of seaweed or something and utterly terrify them. And of course, the water's not that clear, so you don't have any idea it's there. You're just riding along, and then all of a sudden the horse is like, oh my god, there's something in here with me. And Bolt, she just came flying as that happened. She should have been able to sit that, honestly. He bolted, he didn't buck or do anything crazy, but obviously a lot of people can't sit that. We already know that from all the other fail videos we've seen. But it does make the water a little trickier. You can't see things coming And the seeing things coming is such a big piece for like me at least. If I can see it just a second before it happens, I'm gonna be a much better position, much more prepared to deal with it. It's a lot harder for me when I'm completely caught off guard and have no idea that something is gonna happen. I just have no idea that the horse is gonna spook us something. Obviously, I try to always be in a balanced position so I can go with stuff. And I have a good sense for when my horses are tense or not, so I'm rarely caught off guard, but I do love the heads up, so I do try to just pay a little attention, especially when I feel my horse already being a little tense and I know we're getting to that threshold where they might panic. I hope you guys enjoyed this horse fails video. Lots of jumping falls, which seem to be the most popular form of horse fails. Because I'm a jump trainer, you know, that suits me just fine. I can talk about jump fails all day long because, you know, it's what I teach every day is, well, I mean, I teach a lot of flat work and problem horses, but I teach majority of my students how to jump and how to prevent these kinds of fails from happening. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a comment down below, let me know. And if you have any wonderful, amazing fail videos for me to react to, or anything else for that matter, put that in that comment box down below. Let me know. I would love to react to whatever you suggest. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.